Oh, how's everybody doing today? You are hanging with the Niner Nut, and I hope everybody's enjoying this beautiful Sunday. At least it is beautiful here on the East Coast. The weather is mint, a little humid, but hey, I'll take that over the cold anytime. Just going over this new 2022 NFL schedule, and I think already the consensus is that this is going to be a tough schedule, which pretty much makes sense. Just kind of looking this over from like a bird's eye view. Obviously, we're playing some top-notch teams. Always taking into consideration that our division, the NFC West, is by far the most competitive division in football, or at least one of the most competitive divisions for that matter. Of course, the weak link being the Seattle Seahawks, which I'm really happy to say. But then again, you never know how things are going to transpire per the season. Although I don't see the Seahawks really being a threat, especially after losing Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, and the great Bobby Wagner. Therefore, they will be the weak link in that division. But of course, the Cardinals and the filthy, disgusting, horrible Los Angeles Rams, who I still think we're light years better than, I still think are overrated, will be two of the more games that will really be interesting for us. But just looking at this again, uh, it's gonna be very interesting, I think, for the most part. But I feel good about this because I think this team is very well prepared to go the distance with anybody. Now we saw last season that obviously we didn't start off well. Well, we started off decent, but then things got really ugly with that stretch of games that we lost. But then from there, rebounded well and rode all the way to the NFC Championship game. So again, given the injuries, given the things that happen, I think we're very durable. And given the fact that we have a lot of the majority of this team still together on both sides of the ball, as well as the coaching staff, it really only helps solidify ourselves as a major threat. And, just going through the schedule a little bit as we just see, there's going to be obviously going to be some tough games. I mean, obviously, Denver, the Rams, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Dolphins. I kind of have to surmise that they're going to be a threat, although we don't know what we have there with new head coach Mike McDaniel. The Buccaneers, the Raiders. So hey, man, whatever. This is what happens. It's kind of strange how we got one of the hardest schedules in football, but whatever the fuck, who cares? It is what it is. That being said, we'll just get into this. So week one, we're away. Obviously, you see the preseason games. Well, the timing is, of course, and the dates are not really known yet. But we do have the Packers, the Vikings, and the Texans. I don't really put a lot of emphasis on the preseason games that much because, again, starters sit, rookie studs don't really get in there, and depending on the injuries, who's rehabbing, what have you. So just kind of focusing on the regular season. Okay, so we open up in Chicago against the Bears, who we beat last season. And, for the most part, just going over what the Bears have done in the offseason this past year, you can see that they signed Trevor Simon, Nathan Peterman, Byron Pringle away from the Kansas City Chiefs, Equanimeous, whatever, however you say. I just butchered that man's name. From the Packers, David Moore, Dante Pettis, Taji Sharp, Brian Griffin away from the Jets, James O'Shaughnessy, I can always butcher his name too, away from the Jaguars, Julian Davenport, Lucas Patrick, Dakota Dozier, Muhammad Jones, Matt Adams, Nicholas Morrow, Tavon Young, DeAndre Houston, Carson, and Patrick Scales. Didn't make really a lot of huge leaps and bounds in the offseason as far as additions and stuff like that. But, they did lose, of course, the great Allen Robinson to our rival, the Rams. And they do have weapons as there already is. I mean, they also lost Khalil Mack to the Chargers. But just looking at some of their roster for the upcoming season. I mean, again, this is going to be under a new head coach, of course. We know that already. And I don't see this team being a major threat. I still think that they're trying to find themselves and see how good we see how good they can possibly be. That being said, it'll be interesting to see what Justin Fields does in his second season. This year he will be the full time starter, of course. Where we didn't see that happen last year, he kind of picked up um, for Andy Dalton halfway through the season. Matt Eberflus, of course, the new head coach. It's definitely going to be interesting to see what this team turns out to be. Again, I don't think they're going to be much of a threat at all. They also play in a very tough division. Just looking over their new moves: Luke Getsy, offensive coordinator; Alan Williams, Richard Hightower, and just some of the other coaches. So again, you have to kind of be under the understanding that it's going to be a little different for Eberflus. I don't know how things are going to work out. He's obviously been in the league for a while, 30 years experience. But that being said, I think this is a game that we should definitely win. It'll also be interesting to see what happens now. We get the second year Trey Lance, hopefully, versus the second year Justin Fields. And I don't know. Justin Fields, again, from what we saw from him last year, I think that it was kind of limited. Obviously, a lot more than we saw from Trey Lance because of the playing time. But I think that there's some upside to him. Obviously, they got to get him some better targets. Darnell Mooney's really turning into a stud. Cole Kmet came on big at the end of the season last year. Looked like more of a possession type receiver, a possession type tight end, I should say. David Montgomery out of the backfield. He seems to be a solid guy, but I don't. This team looks like a 6-11 type team, 7-10, what have you, given the rough division they play in. So I feel good about this one. Moving on to week 2, I think will be the game that people are going to be looking to. Because what kind of Seahawk team is this going to be? Who's going to be starting? Is Baker Mayfield going to end up in Seattle? Who knows right now? So it looks like it's going to be Drew Lock. I can't really see anybody else getting the start there. I can't see Geno Smith getting the start there, although I could be wrong, but I doubt it. And again, just going over some of the moves that the Seattle Seahawks made in this past offseason. Yeah, the Drew Lock trade. Drew Lock's one of those guys that I really hoped would turn into the best for in Denver, but that didn't seem to happen. He couldn't stay healthy. He did have that one decent season 2 years ago in which he played a couple of games. And with that trade, the Seahawks also acquired Shelby Harris and Noah Fant, which really, look, you never trade a guy like Russell Wilson. Okay, that's just like kind of practical, kind of pragmatic. Who knows what went on there? Obviously, he wanted to move on to greener pastures, and hat off to him because he's a great quarterback and he's moving on to a team that obviously is going to be a lot better in the Denver Broncos, along with the head coach Nathaniel Hackett. Geno Smith resigns. Rashad Penny, came on really big last year, teamed to be the stud. Will Dissly, Noah Fant. The Seahawks really needed a tight end. Noah Fant should be fine. What's funny, too, is if they go with Noah Fant and they go with Drew Lock, they already have some type of camaraderie from playing together. So I guess I could see at this point them going with Drew Lock unless something changes. Austin Blythe, Kyle Fuller, Shelby Harris, Quentin Jefferson, Al Woods, Nuoso, Artie Burns, Justin Colvin, Sidney Jones, and Quandre Diggs. Being that Pete Carroll's a tremendous head coach, I can't see this Seattle team just lying down dead and not doing anything. I think they're going to be competitive, but obviously they're not going to be as good as they used to be, given the fact that they lost Russell Wilson and, of course, one of the best linebackers in football, one of the best linebackers in history, and Bobby Wagner. I can't see them being a lie-down dead team. But that being said, I think that this is another game that's winnable for us, especially being that we're home opening day against the Seahawks. This is a game I feel good about. I think that we should knock them off. It shouldn't be a problem. We have to take 2 from them without a doubt. Because let's face it, if you can't take 2 from the Rams and if you can't take 2 from the Cardinals, you got to take 2 from Seattle. And we already know how the NFC West can be. that with the teams that play each other in there, it's always a slugfest for the most part. Especially as the season goes on, it becomes very interesting. But again, winnable game, 2 winnable games. Week 3 is going to be an interesting one. That's Sunday Night Football. That's us and Denver at Mile High, of course. And we already know what we're facing there. We're facing Russell Wilson and his new treads with his new head coach, Nathaniel Hackett. And, of course, Denver made a lot of moves this past offseason. Yeah, they did lose Noah Fant. They did lose Drew Lock. And they did lose Shelby Harris. But just looking, look, they signed another ex-49er, Josh Johnson. Melvin Gordon re-signed. Now they can continue to have that good 1-2 combination in the offensive backfield with Javonte Williams. So again, this is a team, I think, under head coach Nathaniel Hackett that will definitely be improved, because last year they were a really good team, and they did it with Teddy Bridgewater, they did it with Drew Lock, they did it with a lot of injuries, especially to the wide receiver corps there. They didn't also have Chubb. He was missing a big chunk of the season, but hey, look, I'm going to be looking at this right here. I'm going to be focusing on DJ Jones that day. Who obviously I didn't want to lose as a 49er, because he was one of the most important parts of the defensive unit that we had. Josie Jewell, Malik Reed, Alex Singleton, another hell of a very good athlete. Alex Singleton came over from the Eagles, a tackling machine. Kawon Williams, of course, another 49er. I did not want to lose. Kareem Jackson re-signs. So they made some good moves. Randy Gregory comes over, big contract from the Dallas Cowboys. Another 49er in Tom Compton. So that's what I'm going to be looking at that day. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going to be looking at those 3 dudes, as well as Russell Wilson. This is going to be a tough game, man. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's going to depend on how quickly the Denver Broncos can come together as a unit. And I don't think it's going to take a lot, because Russell Wilson's a really cerebral guy, as we know. And I think he's going to really get that rapport going with those wide receiving corps, with all that they have in Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and so on. And their defense has always been really the thing that stands out the most about the Denver Broncos. So that's going to be a tough one, without a doubt. Week 4 is going to be really interesting. Obviously, that's going to be an ESPN game, our first matchup against the filthy Los Angeles Rams. Fuck the Rams. I hate the Rams on Monday Night Football. Look, we whipped their ass last season. We knocked them off in the season finale. We came close to knocking them off in the NFC Championship game. This is a rematch, basically. Okay, this is a rematch, and we know what the Rams have done in this offseason. They've made some interesting moves for the most part. They obviously, we don't know what the future holds for ODB, although I don't think it really matters, because I guess he did some things with them, but he really, with the signing of Allen Robinson, that should really take over for anything with Tim. Obviously, their biggest move of the season was the acquisition of Bobby Wagner, signing a 2-year, $17.5 million contract. That's huge. The Troy Hill move was actually big too, to bolster their defensive backfield. And you're gonna laugh, but I think that this move too here, re-signing Joe Noteboom. Anytime you can re-sign a guy who's been in your system, as well as Brian Allen, they're solidifying that offensive line, obviously, which is so key to Matt Stafford's success, because they got to give him time to throw. So I think that look, the Rams are going to be exactly who we know they have to be. They have a very good head coach. Let's face it. Okay, they run a really good system. They lost Sony Michael over to where did Sony Michael go this past? They went to Miami. Mike McDaniel, right? Our ex-dude who loves running backs. What's up, Reggie? How you doing, man? Thank you for listening, man. Appreciate it. This is where people are going to be focusing this next season, the matchup. Okay, because let's face it, we were a few minutes away from knocking this team off and going to the Super Bowl ourselves, and we were more than capable of doing it. I don't want to hear the Jimmy G shit. I don't want to hear the Trey Lance shit. I'm talking about as an overall team. We could have been in that that Super Bowl as well, and we would have dominated the Bengals left and right because our defense was hitting on all cylinders, and no one could even come close to touching us in those closing weeks. Hence, be why I still give us the benefit of the doubt against the friggin' Rams because our defense is better than theirs. I don't give a shit. As good as Aaron Donald is, and yeah, I know he came up big in the closing seconds, closing minutes, closing quarter of our matchup with them in the NFC Championship game, I think. But when you match things up pound for pound, we're better than they are, without a doubt. So these first 4 games are going to be. I like that we've got 2 division rivals early on. Because look, would I love to be 4-0? Sure. Being practical, would I love to be 3-1? Yeah, I'll take it. I don't want to be 2-2 in those opening games. Although, let's face it, this team, we saw what happened last year when we went on the losing slide and then turned things around. Now, obviously, we can't, say that's going to be the same thing. But the good thing we have going for us is that the camaraderie that we already have with a lot of the players that have been in this program under Shanny for a bit. That's something in our favor for sure. Moving on to week 5, obviously is a winnable game. The shitty Carolina Panthers, who I don't know about you, I just don't understand anything about this team. I don't understand why Matt Rule is still going with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is a bust, okay? Look, is he horrible, disgusting, terrible? No, he's mediocre, and that's all he'll ever be. He's a slight tad bit better than Mark Sanchez, which isn't really saying much, okay, given the fact that both of them came out and, had this huge following and was supposed to be shoulda, woulda, coulda bullshit. But looking at the moves they've made, D'Onta Foreman, I guess, has kind of earned the new contract because he did come on pretty decent at the end of last season, given the injuries that he had. Rashad Higgins, more of a 3-4 receiver with the Cleveland Browns. Although, hey, look, you never know. He could turn out to be a stud. DJ Moore was one of their biggest and most important signings. 3-year contract worth $61 million. DJ Moore was playing lights out as one of the best receivers in football the early couple of weeks last year when Sam Darnold kind of tried to shock and, confuse us all. And then he came back to being what he really is. We kind of saw the Sam Darnold that we kind of expected. Andre Roberts, good kick returner. Brandon Zylstra. Ian Thomas, really, kind of more of a 2 tight end. Austin Colbert. Pretty solid offensive lineman. Bradley Bozeman, Marquise Haynes. That's a good move right there. Was Matthew Ioannidis, who's a very good defensive tackle, came over from Washington. Corey Littleton, another solid linebacker. He signed a contract for 2 years. Damian Wilson, Dante Jackson, Rashad Melvin, Justin Burris re-signed. Sean Chandler, Xavier Wood signed some money. Johnny Hekker, you're going to laugh, man. I really like that move for them because Johnny Hecker's a really good punter, has a great leg. And kicker Zane Gonzalez, 2-year, $4.5 million contract. But this is a team, look, that really hasn't, I can't see them being any much better than, than last year. I mean, you kind of look at their roster, bringing it up right now as we speak. For those of you that can't see, but you kind of look at their roster for the upcoming season. And again, like we said, it's DJ Jones, and of course Robbie Anderson on the outside. And then, of course, the biggest question is going to be, what's the deal with Christian McCaffrey? I mean, is he going to be good to go? Is he going to be back to the way he used to be? Who knows? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that because the injuries have really hindered him from just, being the stud that we all saw early in his career. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, I think, with him in this upcoming season. But this is a team I can't really see that's really going to be, lights out killer. They do have some tools. They got some interesting weapons for sure. But again, look, it all depends on who's going to be throwing the ball back there. Look, there's a guy who I really like. It's Jeremy Chin. He's a stud rocket for sure. I'm going to be interesting to see what happens with Matt Corral. Now, personally, I kind of said this in the when I broke down the draft, the reviewing some of the moves with the draft, and we talked about this, and I think this has kind of been, some of the news out there in the rest of the league is I think Matt Corral is obviously going to eventually get some playing time next season. I don't think he's going to be the starter. We already know Rule's going to go with Sam Darnold, but let's face it, this is Sam Darnold's going to be, 5th or 6th year? by that time, if you haven't improved to be a stud, it's never going to happen. So Matt Corral could be the future for them. Moving on from that, okay, the offensive line is pretty solid. Guys like Cameron Irving, Pat Elefine, but uh, they've made that defense the running back field a little deeper with Donta Foreman, obviously Chuba Hubbard, and we'll have to see what happens with McCaffrey. They got two very good wide receivers. Okay, and their defense has been somewhat, last year their defense was playing really good early on, but everything seemed to kind of go downhill once Sam Darnell kind of tanked and just became absolute dog shit. But this is a winnable game. Okay, I don't see this team doing anything out of the ordinary. I think this is another game that we win, knocking off the Carolina Panthers. Moving on to a similar team who question mark is the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the interesting thing about these next two games is we're away back-to-back week against teams that are kind of subpar, the Panthers and the Falcons. The Falcons, I don't know, tell you the truth, the Marcus Mariota move never made sense to me. I don't know what they saw in this guy from the limited time that he's played that they're going to give him the starting job. That says to me you're desperate, but it also says to me that obviously you're retooling for the future. Obviously, you should have never traded away Matt Ryan, but hey, whatever, man. Because let's face it, the Falcons were semi-competitive last year. They made things very interesting at times with the limitations that they had. No Calvin Ridley, of course. They had lost Julio Jones last season. Injuries kind of decimated them. They couldn't really run the ball a lot too well. And you trade away your most, I want to say, your best player. You trade away your best player, which I just don't understand. They did retool a little bit in the draft, but again, this is a process I think for them that's going to take 1 or 2 or 3 seasons. I think Arthur Smith did a phenomenal job last year as a head coach. He had this team hitting on all cylinders. They've got some talent there, some good young talent. But again, they took a step backwards getting rid of Matt Ryan. And these are 2 winnable games for us. Even if, look, those are the first 6 games of the season, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At that point, we obviously have to be 5-1, 4-2, or let's face it, 6-0. Okay, there's no reason why we should lose the Chicago game, the Seattle game, the Carolina game, the Atlanta game. Okay, it should be at best 5-1. We got to win one of those games against the Rams or the Broncos. Of course, I would love to say 6-0, but I try and be a little bit practical about things. But these are winnable games early on. Okay, and away, the good thing is we're going away. We do really well on the road. We're playing 3 shit teams on the road: Bears, Falcons, and the Panthers. So I can't really think that this Falcon team is going to be dynamic. But I will say that Arthur Smith is going to have them playing high. Look at this. Mariota gets a 2-year deal. I mean, look, it's only $6.75 million. But listen, Marcus Mariota is what Marcus Mariota is. I don't think that things are going to change drastically for him. I don't see it happen. Obviously, their biggest weapon is Cordell Patterson, who, does everything under the sun. He's their Deebo Samuel. He catches the ball. He runs the ball. I don't think there's anything he can't do. Damian Williams, not a bad move to bolster that backfield. I don't really see Damian Williams as being the end-all, be-all starter there. I think you can kind of use him various ways, bouncing him out, flexing him out to use him as a wide receiver and whatnot. Out of the backfield. Anthony Fersker is actually an interesting move because I liked what I saw from him in his time with Tennessee, where he kind of was splitting the tight end duties, but seemed to get a lot more of the ball. Although I can't, obviously, you're not going to be seeing him starting there, but he could be a good number 2. Good number 2 option. Damiere Byrd's kind of a journeyman. Bryan Edwards, the recent move. He was traded from the Raiders yesterday. Okay, so they're trying their best to bolster that wide receiver area, as we know they need to big time. Because look at the moves they made. Kadrell Hodge, Auden Tate. Here's the guy that we got to keep an eye on is this Olamide Zaccheaus. He has the ability to kind of be a big game receiver, I think, depending on how he's utilized. But it all depends on who's throwing him the ball. Jake Matthews is a great offensive tackle. They signed Fetty, who's a journeyman, Elijah Wilkinson. Grady Jarrett's a good defensive tackle. Lorenzo Carter, Rashaan Evans, Nick Kiwatowski. Made some solid moves. Casey Highwood, Isaac Oliver, Eric Harris, Dean Marlowe, and of course Young Hoku, who's become one of their main point scorers. Really solid kicker, very accurate. I listen. I think that the Falcons are going to be a lot more competitive than the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears, for that matter, given the fact that a coaching job that Arthur Smith was able to do last year, and just from this tight roster that he has. I mean, things could change, but again, a winnable game for us. But this is one of those games that could be a trap game, because these are obviously you can't take any team lightly, but the Falcons in Atlanta, it's something you don't want to look over. Week 7. Listen, we're all looking for that one, man. Oh, there goes the phone. Apologies. Gravity and whatnot. We're all looking at that game in week 7. Kay Grissaw, we can definitely count on Debo, brother. It's definitely he'll be back. I'm not worried about it. I think everything is going to be fine. I think that's been exhausted so much by the media and whatnot. It's a lot of clickbait bullshit, but I think things are going to work out for us. Debo will be back, and we'll be clicking on all cylinders. But this week 7 game against the Chiefs at home, man, I can't wait for that one. That's a good test. It's a rematch of the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and it's a Kansas City Chief team with no Tyreek Hill. Obviously they're still a dangerous team. They still have the great Patrick Mahomes. They still have Travis Kelce. I don't think they're gonna be any worse than they would be without Tyreek Hill. Now, what I mean is, of course, Tyreek Hill brings so much of a dynamic to wherever he was and was such a big part of this team. But they're such a well-defined machine, especially with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy still being there. They're going to be solid, man. They're going to be one of the top teams again. They were, a game away from going to the AFC Championship game last season. From the Super Bowl. So I can't see them being that bad. They're going to be a threat. This is a game we have to win. And again, a good early matchup against a severe threat. I like week 8. I like the fact that we're playing the Rams early on. Okay, it's only 4 weeks in duration from the first time we play them to the second time that we play them. I like that a lot. There's not a long stretch, so we get a good taste for them, and then we already know what to expect. But I think that's kind of textbook already. Just going back to the Chiefs real quick and looking at some of the moves they already made. We all know that they lost their biggest weapon in Tyreek Hill, who they traded to the Miami Dolphins over to Mike McDaniel, right? They re-signed Chan Henne. Ronald Jones signs there. Okay. Corey Coleman signs. Juju, and Marquise Valdes-Scantling. Are Juju and Marquise Valdes-Scantling the same as Tyreek Hill? No, obviously not, but I think that it's a very good addition for both of them to that team. Blake Bell, the once 49er, I should say. Orlando Brown, Austin Ryder. They do sign Frank Clark, Derek Nandi, Jermaine Carter, Deion Bush, which was a really good move. Justin Reed, another good move, and Lonnie Johnson. So they're solidifying their defensive backfield, especially after we signed Charvarius Ward away from them. I can't see the Chiefs being anything else but the Chiefs. Okay, this is going to be a tough game. But we got that's a winnable game right there. And then, of course, like I said, against week 8 against the Rams, we're in LA. And then we get the bye after that in week 9, which I like. So we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 games until the bye. Hopefully by that point, we're 6-2. I'll take 5-3. Okay, 4-4 I won't settle for. I don't want that. You can't lose 4 games early on these couple of weeks, and then because things don't get any easier. You got one playoff team. You got the Chargers, then you got the Cardinals twice, then you got the Raiders and the Buccaneers. So no, we have to be at least the worst 5-3. Week 10. Going to be looking to this one because the Chargers are already chirping, talking a lot of shit, which I like. This is going to be a good matchup. This is a Charger team. The Chargers are funny because the Chargers are their own worst enemy always. We all know that. Okay, they've got the quarterback of the future, Justin Herbert. Obviously, two of the best dynamic dual wide receivers are Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Okay, Austin Eckler, the ultimate threat, but their defense and their offensive line has been what's really impressive for them as they've improved so much, and I think they're going to take a step farther this season coming up. They re-signed Chase Daniel, who's like a traveling. I don't know. I don't know what Some people are like, well, he's the best backup. I don't know about that, but they re-signed him. They signed DeAndre Carter. Mike Williams gets some money. Gerald Everett comes over, which is a solid move, adding him to that tight end position. Chris Covington, Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph. Biggest move they made all offseason is Khalil Mack. Kyle Van Noy. I hope he has something left. Another good linebacker, ex-Patriot. Bryce Callahan, J.C. Jackson, probably one of the top, could be the best cornerback in football, gets a mega deal, 5 years, $82.5 million, 40 guaranteed. Josh Harris and Dustin Hopkins. This team is going to be a top team in the NFL. I think that we could pretty much see them compete for the AFC West crown. It's going to be, for the most part, I want to say, a three-way race between them, the Raiders, and, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. I want to give Denver the benefit of the doubt and say they're going to be there, but I just have to wait and see if things work out. But for the most part, this could be a four-way. That's a very interesting division. It's so competitive. As we saw last year, anyone could have taken the crown there, and you're going to see that happen again. So another tough game for us, man. Another tough game for us. And it's amazing that we're playing 1, 2, 3, 4 AFC West teams in this upcoming season. And not, for the most part, we get the Chiefs 2 weeks apart from the Chargers. So that should be interesting. Week 11, going to be a very interesting game. Our first matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, one of our rivals in the NFC West. And everybody knows what the Cardinals have done in this offseason. The trade on the draft day for Hollywood Brown, which I think should definitely help them. They did lose Christian Kirk, one of their wide receivers last year, long ball. Colt McCoy re-signed. Colt McCoy toasted us last year, though let me say this. We made Colt McCoy look amazing last year. James Conner, in my opinion, one of the most underrated, durable, and best players last season, an absolute machine. At one point, he was their total offense. How many touchdowns was he scoring back-to-back weeks? Marquise Brown. AJ Green still got some gas in the tank, man. I liked what I saw of him. Zach Ertz gets a new deal. They did draft a rookie tight end, and they have Max Williams, so they're going to be tight on the offensive side of the ball. Will Hernandez, another good move as the offensive line. Michael Dodgeby, Dennis Gardeck, Nick Vigil, solid linebacker. Jeff Gladney, Andy Lee still going. God bless him. I loved Andy Lee. Great punter. I think Kay Grizzard with Arizona, I think we can expect them to still be a tight team. Let's face it. DeAndre Hopkins, we know, will most likely be back. I don't see him breaking down anytime soon again. He had the injuries, but for the most part, he's always been durable and been that guy that kind of plays with injuries. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that last year. But, look, everything for them depends on Kyler Murray, what type of Kyler Murray that we're going to see. I think that he took a step back last year for sure, but I still think Kyler Murray is a damn good quarterback. So this is going to be a tough game for us. You can say what you want about them. I still think that they're a solid coach team, but I think this season it's make or break for them. Let's face it, because they're running out of time, I think, with Kyler Murray. And again, what are we saying when I say that? What I say is Kyler Murray is an upgrade than so many other guys. I think Kyler Murray, the scrambling type of quarterback, I want to say, compared to the scrambling type of quarterbacks that they have in the NFL, I think he's one of the better ones. But I think that you really have to solidify him, or you have to have solidified targets around him to be good. Now, the move for Marquise Brown, I could understand. Because, Marquise Brown, what we saw from him in Baltimore, he didn't stretch the field so much at times He was more of a quarterback's weapon. He can be used various ways, which is really, a compliment towards him. So you got the DeAndre Hopkins, you got him, you got AJ Green, you got Ertz. So you got James Conner. This is a well-tooled machine, and we could only expect that This is going to be a tough game, without a doubt. No game is easy, but these games are going to be the ones that stand out. And I like the fact that we're in Arizona against them as opposed to coming home in Week 18 against Arizona. Moving on next to the New Orleans Saints, team I can't stomach. We're home against the Saints in Week 12. Just looking over from some of the stuff the Saints have done, we all know, obviously, there is no more Sean Payton, of course. Dennis Allen is the new head coach, although he's been there for various years. Jameis Winston resigned. It looks like he'll be their quarterback to starting opening day. That's their problem. I would never have paid him a 2-year, $28 million contract. I think Jameis Winston is in the same boat as Samuel Darnell. He's a mediocre quarterback at best. That's all he'll ever be. Okay, I don't think this guy's going to blow the doors of Andy Dalton. Okay, the traveling quarterback journeyman, a guy who I always felt never got his due. We could possibly see Andy Dalton become the starter there. I mean, if Jameis Winston goes down or things don't work out, why not? Jarvis Landry, the most recent move they made 2 days ago, obviously bolstering their wide receiver corps. They hope to get Michael Thomas back full-time this season. It makes a nice combination with Jarvis Landry and Traquan Smith. Taco Charlton, poor Contavious Street. I wanted to keep him. P.J. Williams, Tyrann Mathieu, of course, the other big move. But look at their defensive backfield. They signed 3 really good safeties. I mean, primarily Tyrann Mathieu, obviously being the stud there. Marcus May, to me, I didn't like the fact that there was a play 2 years ago. He kind of ducked out of bounds, didn't want to do any collision when he was with the Jets. I forgot who they were playing against, but he's mediocre. Daniel Sorensen's a solid safety, kind of old school hitting. The Saints, I never know what to make. I think the days of the Saints being an ultimate threat are obviously gone ever since Drew Brees retired, although, they still have Alvin Kamara, and like I said, their wide receiver corps is pretty tight. But again, this all depends on who's throwing them the ball. Is it going to be, what Jameis Winston are we talking about? I only know one Jameis Winston. You could say that Jameis Winston that threw for 5,000 yards that in his last year with the Buccaneers, but same Jameis Winston, how many interceptions did he throw? That year, he was throwing interceptions like Mr. Softy gives out ice cream. Let's face it. So I don't know that this is going to be a great team. I could see them being a 500 or a little below the 500 mark. Another winnable game for us at home. And just talking about winnable games at home, look at what we have to play at home. Okay, obviously, Seattle and LA, and we have the Cardinals at home. But other than division games at home, we have the Chargers, we have the Saints, we have the Buccaneers, and the Dolphins, and Washington. So our home schedule is going to be very interesting. This is a winnable game. A must-win game, I think, for us. You can't drop one to the Saints, and from that standpoint, it's 1, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4, it's 5, it's 6, it's 7, it's 8, it's 9, it's 10 to 11 games into the season, and then we go on with the Saints included a 3-week stint of playing games home. Week 13 is going to be where everyone's looking. Student versus teacher, Padawan versus Jedi. Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan, and obviously, unless you've been living on a fucking desert island, you know what the Miami Dolphins have done in this past offseason. Obviously, Mike McDaniel getting the head coaching job has really put together a fine move of roster moves there with that team. Of course, the most one that sticks out the most is the trade for Tyreek Hill coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs. But they've made move after move. They had so much money to spend it wasn't even funny. And I think for the most part, they did spend that money kind of wisely. Part of me is rooting for Mike McDaniel, but definitely not when we play them. But it's going to be look at the moves they made. Teddy Bridgewater, solid move, signing him as a backup. But that's going to be the question mark for them. Is Tua Tagovailoa going to be their future? And I think that right now it's questionable. It'll be interesting to see what McDaniel can do with him. But it's always good to have a backup, solid journeyman veteran, Teddy Bridgewater. Chase out Edmonds, they sign Sony Michael and Raheem Mostert. That is a very crowded offensive backfield in terms of running backs with Sullivan Ahmad, Myles Gaskin. They've got running back after running back. So someone's going to have to get cut. Alec Ingold to me was a great move for them, a really solid fullback, which they definitely need, especially if they're going to be a run-first team, which I think we could possibly see being that's what Mike McDaniel liked to use. Tyreek Hill move, of course. Now, just think about that wide receiving corps, if you will. It's gonna be extremely dangerous for them, for the opponents, I should say. Waddle and Tyreek Hill automatically upgrade that offense so much. It's just a question of who's going to be throwing in the ball. Trent Sherfield, an ex-49er. Preston Williams, they re-signed. Hopefully, he can find what he was 2 seasons ago before he got injured. Cedric Wilson comes over from Dallas. Got a shitload of money, 3-year, $22 million for a guy who's pretty much been a 3 or 4 wide receiver in his career. But kudos to him. Mike Gesicki. I like Mike Gesicki a lot, man. He's a real solid tight end. Teron Armstead, one of the best moves that they made. One of great left tackle. They signed him away from the New Orleans Saints. Connor Williams gets signed away from the New York Jets. Emmanuel Ogbah comes over from the Cleveland Browns. I'm sorry, my bad. No, he doesn't re-sign. I'm thinking of somebody else. My brain went south there. John Jenkins re-signs Duke Riley, re-signs Landon Roberts, Brendan Scarlett, and of course, they agree to their most dangerous defensive weapon in that defensive backfield, the great Xavier Howard, and the veteran Thomas Morstead as a punter. Look, I hope for Mike McDaniel's sake, this team turns out to be really good. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in that AFC East. Everyone has improved. The Jets have improved their roster. New England, you can always expect them to be solid. Bill Belichick's always cooking something up. The Buffalo Bills, I think, are going to be one of the best teams in the NFL, preferably a Super Bowl candidate, because they're right where they should be, and they made some solid moves this offseason. But this Dolphin team can really be can turn into a threat. Now, the thing is, at week 13, who knows what this Dolphin team will turn into? They may be a double-digit winning team at that point, contending for a playoff spot. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens between us and them. And I just can't wait to see the matchup between McDaniel and Shanny. Moving on from there, another one everyone's got on their calendars. Week 14, Mr. Brady is back. I'm happy we're home for this one. And look, another tough game. What can you say? You can't find enough words, the correct words, to kind of just put them into context for this game. I'm sure the Buccaneers are going to be exactly what everyone has expected them to be from last year. I mean, not too many changes were made to that roster, really, but Brady's back. Obviously, that's the most important thing for them. They re-signed Mr. Gabbert. Remember the days of Blaine Gabbert, everybody? I think we do. Giovanni Bernard and Leonard Fournette come back. Shaq Mason comes over from the Patriots. Good move for them. Russell Gage, Chris Godwin, they signed. Russell Gage is a guy who is a very underrated wide receiver. I like him a lot. I think he can find some luck back there in that receiving corps. Although it's going to be a little bit crowded. They did re-sign Chris Godwin. They did re-sign Brissad Perryman. And they've got extreme amounts of talents there. Who knows if Gronk is going to be back? Don't really know yet. But whatever the case may be, we can only expect that the Buccaneers are going to be, firing on all cylinders next year. They re-signed Josh Wells, Aaron Stinney, Ryan Jensen, who's become a very important part of their offensive line. Real solid center. William Golston, veteran, re-signs. Carlton Davis, Keanu Neal, that was a really good move that they signed him away from the Falcons. Logan Ryan, and they re-signed Zach Trina. They're going to be exactly what they're going to be. I can't expect them to be anything different than what we've seen It'll definitely be interesting to see how we're able to hold up against Brady. So, two really good games back to back. Thank God they're at home for us. One against the Dolphins, one against the Buccaneers. Week 15 is our second matchup with the Seahawks, which will be in Seattle. Who knows what the Seahawks will be like at that point? Who knows who will be quarterbacking them? Will it be Drew Lock? Sure shit ain't going to be Geno Smith, and it could possibly be Baker Mayfield if all goes true with these rumors that have been going around about him going there. Although, according to Pete Carroll, that's not going to happen. But another winnable game. Like I said, we got to double up here and kind of knock off the Seahawks twice. Moving on to Week 16 is going to be another interesting game against the Commanders at home. And for the most part, this is a roster that's had some interesting changes to it. Obviously, the one that sticks out the most is the quarterback move, where they were able to acquire Carson Wentz in a trade from the Indianapolis Colts. The second time that Wentz has been traded in his career. Look, Carson Wentz statistically had a pretty decent year last year, but Carson Wentz is exactly as we expect Carson Wentz to be. Him and Jared Goff, I don't really see, guys like him, Jared Goff, Jameis Winston, they kind of all fall into the same bracket. They're mediocre guys. I mean, Carson Wentz, I always want to give the benefit of the doubt to, but when it comes up to the big moment, he just doesn't seem to have it. Just not the guy there. And obviously, at this point, all these teams wouldn't have moved on from him if they felt that he was the guy to go to. J.D. McKissick, I think that's one of the best moves. Another underrated player. He reminds me of a guy by the name of Ronnie Harmon Jr., who used to play with the San Diego Chargers back in the day when they were the San Diego Chargers. One of the more efficient running backs who had great hands, being a wide receiver out of the backfield. Cam Sims resigns. Cornelius Lucas resigns. Andrew Norwell comes over from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trey Turner comes over. So they're making some moves to solidify their offensive line. Tyler Lawson resigns. Effie Oboda, Bobby McCain, Joey Sly. Listen, anytime you have Riverboat Ron as your head coach, this team's always going to be competitive. And we've seen that from the Commanders in the last couple of seasons, that they've been competitive. I like Tyler Hickney a lot. I could be butchering his name. I apologize. I liked what I saw from him. I wanted him to stay the starter. He could scramble. He could throw. He's got balls. He's got moxie. I liked him, man. I'd like to see him kind of bounce Carson Wentz out of that position, but it'll be interesting to see. Just kind of going to bring up the Commanders roster just to look at a couple different guys there. But yeah, man, look, they were a competitor in that in that NFC East division last year, which is always again another interesting. It's always been an interesting a division for the most part. We've seen it be tight at times in the past with when the Cowboys were, and the Giants were rolling, and the Eagles. I think it's still going to be. It's going to be obviously still very competitive, but Sam Howell. I'm wondering, could he possibly be the next starter in Washington? Look, the only other guy I could think of that came out of North Carolina was Mitch Trubisky, and we've kind of seen what that happened with there. So, I mean, I'm not saying Sam Howell and Mitchell Trubisky the same guy, but, you look at the quarterbacks they have on this roster, Cole Kelly as well. I mean, obviously someone's going to have to go. Someone's going to have to be redshirted, but they do have 1, 2, 3, and 4 quarterbacks. Obviously, the spotlight's going to be on Wentz and Henke and Howell. So you never know. Could be that Sam Howell becomes the starter. Who knows, man? Whatever the case may be, it's going to be interesting to see because things are going to really depend on who's throwing the ball. Let's just see some of these other moves. Antonio Gibson's really becoming a real good running back. I mean, he kind of reminds me of running back in the 90s. Doesn't bounce outside as much, runs between the tackles, nasty and rough, puts you on your ass. Wide receiver wise, for the most part, this is a team that's got a lot of A lot of talent there. Obviously, still waiting to see what the hell happened with Curtis Samuel because he really went into the tank after being signed away from the Carolina Panthers last year. I wonder if things are going to turn around for him. But other than that, everything, in my opinion, is just going to depend on who is throwing the ball there. Going over their defense, of course, they did lose Matthew Ioannidis, which is going to be tough. They did solidify this offensive line a little better, but I think their defense definitely took, for the most part, took a loss there. Montez Sweat is solid. Chase Young's got a rebound from the injuries he had last year, although he's, I'm sure he'll be back at it because he's an extreme talent. Jonathan Allen's a solid defensive tackle. Deron Payne, they still got a real good, decent defensive line. But this Cole Holcomb is a stud muffin, man. That guy's something always to keep an eye on. David Mayo over from the Carolina Panthers, of course. Coach Rivera and him have a rapport, know each other really well. Corn Elder, Kendall Fuller, veteran. William Jackson, a veteran. Bobby McCain, a veteran. Listen, I think that this Washington team is going to be competitive. Now, what I mean by that is I can't see them maybe winning 12 games, but I think given within the division they're playing, it's going to be an elite slugfest for all of them. A lot for the Giants and Washington. I think they're going to be slugging the shit out of each other because they're similar teams in that they don't have an elite quarterback just yet. And for the most part, I think that the Cowboys are going to be and it's. I guess you have to say the Cowboys are going to be the team to beat in that division, although I could be wrong because we know that we keep the Cowboys in our back pocket, obviously. But in that division, just with them dealing with each other, they slug each other out, and it always is interesting to see. Very similar to the AFC West, very similar to the NFC West, despite the Seattle Seahawks. Moving on from there will be a really good matchup in Las Vegas against our once crosstown rival, they were the Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders. And look, everyone knows that the Las Vegas Raiders have really improved their roster in this past offseason. They've made a lot of strides to fine-tune their talent. They gave Derek Carr a mega deal. And for the first couple of weeks last season, Derek Carr, people were talking about him as an MVP. I like Derek Carr a lot, man. I like the way he finished the season. I think he's a solid quarterback, perhaps doesn't get his due. 3 years, $121 million, man. They really gave him too much money and not enough years. Just my opinion. Nick Mullins, our old buddy, signs. They're good for Nick. They just acquired Jarrett Stidham as well from the Patriots. I'm thinking if that was just maybe more of a move, I don't know, maybe to get like a 7 to get something else. Because I can't understand why you would have 4 quarterbacks on the roster. Derek Carr, Garrett Gilbert, who's, been a second and third string his whole life. Mullins and Jarrett Stidham. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen there? Amir Abdullah, Brandon Bolden, expatriate, Jacob Johnson, and of course the biggest move they made in the offseason was getting Davante Adams, trading for him from the Green Bay Packers. Keelan Cole, a journeyman who was once with the Jaguars and the Jets. Demarcus Robinson, that's a really good move for them too. Jacob Hollister, another guy, played with the Seahawks. I thought in his limited time with them, he, there 2-3 years ago when he filled in for the injuries when they had them, he was really solid. Brandon Parker, Max Crosby, they gave a big deal, a nice chunk of money to, well deserved. Another big move, Chandler Jones. Still got a lot of gas in the tank, still a threat. Jonathan Hankins resigns. Bilal Nichols signs. Jayon Brown, Kyler Fackrell over from the Giants. Kenny Young, Anthony Averett, Rock Ya-Sin, love that name, over from the Indianapolis Colts, and Duron Harmon. Hey, look, they've got the roster, obviously. They also did not exercise their 50-year deal on Josh Jacobs, on Farrell, the defensive end, and on Abrams, a defensive. 3 of their first-round draft picks from a couple of years back, which is interesting, so it puts the pressure on those guys. But I think that look at that AFC West, man. Raiders, Chargers, Chiefs, and the Broncos. It's, again, another year it's going to be tight. This is going to be a tough game for us for sure, especially going to that black hole and competing late in the season for another victory. So, going to be a very interesting one. The last game of the season, of course, is at home against the Cardinals, which will be our second matchup with them. And again, another winnable game. We really have to improve, our home record. But it's so for me. Look, the way I look at things sometimes is to judge a team a lot on their away record as well as their home record. But the away record says a lot. When you can win, especially given that you have injuries, things as expected during the season, and you're able to go into an opposing team's house like we did last season when we marched into LA, when we marched into Dallas, and when we marched into motherfucking Green Bay and were victorious. So I'm not worried about us on the road whatsoever. We're more than tested. We need to win games at home. So again, this is just my loose opinion on things. Yeah, gotta knock off the Bears, gotta knock off Seattle. The Denver game, I think, would definitely be able to win. The Ram game, I would love to double up and beat the shit out of them. But winnable games, obviously, against the Panthers and the Falcons. Winnable games against the Saints. When I say winnable games, I'm taking into consideration that anything is possible on any given Sunday, although I'm just, giving my opinion. But at home, obviously, we should defeat the Seahawks twice. I'd like to, I'm sorry. We have to knock off the Seahawks once at home. I'd love to knock off the Rams. I'd rather knock off the Rams twice, but if we're going to beat the Rams, I want to do it in LA. I really do. We got the Chiefs at home. We got the Chargers at home. We got the Saints at home. Dolphins, Bucks, Washington, the Cardinals. We got to improve that record. Okay. So we all know that we have one of the hardest schedules in football this upcoming season, which I think is just going to be just fine for this battle-tested team. We can only expect this to help solidify us as the legit threat that we all know we are. So I'm not gonna put a record on the season. I'm not gonna say 12-5. I'm not gonna say 11-6. I'm not gonna do that. But because again, it's kind of I don't know, man. You see so many cats do that. Would I like to be 12-5? Yeah. Would I like to be 13-4? Yeah. But look, like we all know, regular season record is what the regular season record exactly is. All that matters is us getting into the playoffs and doing the damage we know we can do. I think we are extremely capable of winning the NFC West Championship this year, being the top team in the NFC West Championship, I should say. And, even if we're not, and we're in a situation similar to what we were last year, I think that's just as fun, although I think we'll be higher than that last year. But look, the only place for us right now is to win a Super Bowl. The window is still open, although I don't want to say it's closing, but I think that whatever's going to happen in the upcoming weeks with Jimmy Garoppolo and Deebo Samuel, whatever, and I pretty much think that it's all going to work the way we expect it. We have to win a chip in either this season or next season, but I really think we have to win it sooner than later because this window doesn't stay open forever. And of course, not having a first round draft pick in this past season, this past draft, and the next year is going to affect that, in my opinion. So the window, I want to say, I think the window's always closing once you exit the season in which you either won a Super Bowl or didn't, but you appeared there. The window was closing. Now, 2 years ago was a wash because of the injuries and COVID and all that. Last year was another opportunity that slipped away. Here's another opportunity for us. So it's win it all or nothing. We're not rebuilding. We're not retooling. We have a lot of similarities on the roster that we did last year. So again, the light is on in the office. We have to win a chip at all counts. And I think a lot of people can agree with that. Because let's face it, we haven't won a chip since 94, 95. And, it's been a friggin' drought. We've been there twice, lost twice. We almost got there again last year. Didn't happen. So we're going to be touted to be one of the top teams in the NFL. Now, I guarantee you a lot of experts are not going to put us in the same bracket that they would the Rams, that they would the Buccaneers, that they would the Chiefs, that they would the Chargers. I don't give a fuck what any expert thinks because they're on. I don't, they're like Mel Kiper. They don't mean jack shit to me because things are always changing and experts, whatever. Who makes an expert? But that being said, we all know that we're going to be one of the top teams in the NFL next year and this upcoming season, I should say. And again, it's a green light. It's just go for us. There's nothing else that matters. Obviously, if we don't make the playoffs, which will not happen, it will be a major letdown. But look, Shanny and Lynch need the chip to solidify themselves. So that's the only road that we have is to win it. Okay, but let me hear what you guys think, man. Always a pleasure interacting with you guys. I love going live. Love getting comments. Love getting questions. Even if you disagree with me, that's all good as well. I appreciate that. Thank you for the following. And please, if you get a chance, please go to the YouTube page and give a follow. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Hey, man, let's see what happens in these upcoming weeks. It's getting interesting. If you haven't been paying attention to the rookies who are working their asses off right now in camp, can't wait to see what they turn out to be. All righty, hanging with the Niners nut, and I am